Tonight, be aware. New pesticides may be killing bees and putting our food supply at risk. Who, if anybody, is making sure the chemicals are safe?
The chemical companies do the testing.
The companies do the testing, not the EPA.
Not the EPA.
Good evening. A few years back, we reported about the mysterious deaths of honeybees occurring around the world. It became known as colony collapse disorder, or CCD, and it's where large numbers of honeybees disappear from their hives without a trace, leading to the deaths of entire colonies. Scientists still don't know what causes this phenomenon, but many now see the threat to honeybees as bigger and more ominous than just CCD. Tonight, a new investigation into growing questions about the role of a new class of pesticides, what we know and what we don't know about their impact on honeybees, and ultimately, our entire food system. Commercial honeybees are the workhorse of modern agriculture.
These guys here are pollinating these flowers.
Almost 2 million colonies are rented out to U.S. farmers each year to pollinate much of what we'll eventually eat.
Oh.
It's hard to imagine American agriculture without bees. A farmer's market would be a pretty barren place. No peaches, cucumbers, pears, apples, cherries, pumpkins, avocado, almonds, zucchini, watermelon, or blueberries. These are some of the many crops almost entirely dependent on honeybees for pollination. And now consider this. In the United States, beekeepers are now losing 30 to 50% of their hives each year. With reports of bee deaths coming in from all over the U.S., Europe, the Middle East, and some parts of Asia, we face unknown but potentially devastating consequences on the world's food supply. With the stakes so high, beekeepers across the country are desperately looking for answers. Tom Theobald is a small beekeeper in central Colorado and an unlikely leader of a national movement to challenge America's pesticide policy. He lost 50 to 60% of his hives last winter.
The electric fence keeps the bears out of the bee yard. Well, the question, obviously, is what's causing this? This is very unusual. This just doesn't happen in the bee world. That's okay.
Theobald's beehives are surrounded by rich farmland, growing barley, hay, sugar beets, and corn. His bees search for pollen across thousands of these acres, and since he'd ruled out usual causes of bee deaths, he began to look to the fields for answers, and soon realized something different was going on.
I began investigating, and I began looking at corn. Now, corn is one of those crops that has been treated, the seed is treated, with one of the systemic pesticides, clothianidin.
Systemic pesticides are a new type of pesticide that have changed the game of insect control in the past 15 years. Traditionally, pesticides are sprayed on the surface of leaves or put in the soil to directly kill unwanted insects, and then they wear off or wash away a short time after application and have to be sprayed again. Systemic pesticides, however, are absorbed by the plant, so they become part of the body of the plant for the life of the plant. They are taken up by the roots and leaves and can move to all parts, including the pollen and nectar.
The systemic pesticides are always there. There's no escape from them, and they are there whether there's a pest problem or not. Anything that chews or sucks on that plant is affected by that pesticide.
Farmers like these systemic pesticides because they require a lot less spraying. Derived from nicotine, they're called neonicotinoids, and have quickly become the fastest growing and among the most widely used insecticides in the world. Theobald started looking into records of the Environmental Protection Agency's Office of Pesticides, which approves or registers pesticides for market. What he found shocked him.
What I discovered was a series of Environmental Protection Agency memos which documented the consideration of that product for registration. The first of which was February of 2003, in which the EPA scientists said that they recognized that these systemic pesticides were highly toxic to the bees, and they took the prudent course, which was to determine the safety of this product before it was released to the market.
Theobald read in documents that EPA scientists wanted field tests on bees and thought those would have to be completed before the pesticides were available to the public. But he soon found out that is not what actually happened. Congress had created a provision in pesticide policy called conditional registration, where pesticides can hit the shelves after a set of core safety studies, but before all of the environmental effects are known. In this case, the chemical was shown to be highly toxic to bees in the lab, but it was allowed onto the market anyway while they awaited further field tests on long-term impacts to bee colonies. And just who is responsible for doing these honeybee field studies?
The chemical companies do the testing.
The companies do the testing.
Yes, most people are unaware of the fact that that in fact does occur.
Steve Ellis is a large commercial beekeeper from Barrett, Minnesota, and the secretary of the National Honeybee Advisory Board. He lost 43% of his hives last winter.
Chemical companies hire their own people or their own labs or a research scientist to do product safety testing of their products. They design the tests, they conduct the tests, they pay for the tests.
Not the EPA.
Not the EPA. They present their tests and some other tests that they can come across, and then a packet is submitted. And EPA reviews these tests that are submitted to them.
Beekeepers and citizens groups say this is like asking a fox to design the best chicken coop to protect the chickens. And questions are growing as to whether the EPA is holding industry adequately accountable. They point to Bayer Crop Science, a division of the pharmaceutical giant. In 2003, when Bayer applied for approval of their new systemic pesticide for use on corn seeds, a compound called clothianidin, memos show that EPA scientists asked for field studies to be completed in 1.5 years to determine long-term impacts on honeybee colonies. But the pesticide was on the market for a full 4 years before they submitted their results. Bayer's own analysis reported the compound was safe for bees. The EPA accepted that. But beekeeper Tom Theobald in Colorado saw something very suspicious. The test area the company used to verify their product was safe? Turns out it was only a 2.5-acre plot.
This bee yard behind me will forage over several thousand acres. And to have a study that proposes that putting them on 2.5 acres of canola planted from treated seed is going to give us any kind of valid science is ridiculous. And
Theobald wasn't the only one calling the industry tests bad science.
Anyone with a basic understanding of honeybee biology would look at that test and say this is not a good test design.
Dr. Jim Fraser is an entomologist at Penn State University and is the scientific advisor to the National Honeybee Advisory Board. He is also called upon by the EPA Office of Pesticides to consult on bee health. And he even worked for industry as a senior scientist at DuPont before conducting his own independent research.
In fact, the average foraging area for a honeybee colony is about 28,000 acres. And so you have to be very cautious in your interpretation of what the treated pollen impact is likely to be or not be on a colony.
But more importantly, Fraser says, is that industry tests are not subject to scientific review by the independent community.
And so there's no opportunity for replication or verification that these results are in fact real. Without a lot of honeybee expertise within the EPA, that makes them have a limited capacity to really review and carefully critique these kinds of studies.
While industry studies may not be finding any direct connection between pesticides and overall declines in bee populations, Dr. Fraser says a study he and his team at Penn State conducted shows cause for alarm. Their sampling of hives across the United States found an average of 6 different pesticides in each sample, and in some cases as many as 39 pesticides. Some of these are systemic pesticides.
I think no one had any idea that it could be this large a residue problem. And because the residue consists of insecticides, fungicides, herbicides, miticides that differ in different places across the country, combinations of 5 or 6 or 7 of these materials, there is no toxicological literature that exists for what are the consequences of these combinations of things when ingested or contacted by honeybees or any other insect.
And that's one of the biggest concerns for scientists and beekeepers, that the government agency charged with making sure pesticides are safe is not asking the questions they should be asking.
I think the EPA registration system has been designed to look for short-term toxic consequences of a compound, so something that will kill the insect outright. But then the long-term consequences of that are very complicated and very complex to figure out and very difficult to show experimentally. It's not part of the thinking, really. What's more concern is a dose of insecticide below what is necessary to kill can have what we call sublethal impacts that might alter behavior, it might alter memory, it might alter development, it might alter all kinds of things. So the potential ways in which a lower dose of pesticide could be impacting the insects is tremendous.
While the impact on bees is very much in question, what the EPA has been able to determine is that this class of pesticide is much safer for humans than older pesticides on the market. For one, because farmers use less of them.
Lower toxicity to mammals in general is a feature that we're always kind of trying to target that innovation and research around. And then just overall,
Jay Vroom is president and CEO of CropLife America, the nation's largest trade organization representing the pesticide industry. He says that not only do we need to get the safest options for humans on the market as quickly as possible, but also that the burdens of feeding the world's population is increasing, and pesticides have done wonders for getting more food per acre.
sometime yet this year in 2011, the world population is going to cross over 7 billion. To me, more important is the fact that 1 billion of us, or probably more, went to bed hungry last night, and thousands of us that were in that 1 billion category won't go to sleep tonight because we will die due to malnutrition. That just is unacceptable given the fact that we have the means to improve agricultural output and productivity and supply more food.
According to Vroom, the bottom line is no one has proven a definitive link between systemic pesticides and loss of honeybee colonies.
There is no direct causation that's been identified with regard to these insecticides and the overall bee health issues. But the research continues, and the research continues to be supported by everyone that is a member of our association, including the manufacturers of those products.
We asked the company Bayer Crop Science for an interview. They declined. They did issue a statement saying, in part, the use of seed treatment products has been widely adopted because of their excellent performance. And the company also said there have been no documented effects on colony health due to long-term exposure. But many argue there are links, and studies on honeybees and pesticides are now coming in from around the world. We'll have that part of our investigation for you next.